Welcome to today's deep dive. I want you to start by, well, imagine standing in front of a mirror in a dimly lit room.
Okay, setting a spooky scene right off the bat.
Right. So you look at the glass and you naturally expect to see your face. You know, the tired eyes, the familiar lines, the physical reality of who you are.
Just the usual reflection.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the glass doesn't reflect your body at all. Instead, it starts playing this terrifyingly accurate highlight reel of, well, every script you've been unknowingly reciting your entire life.
Oh, wow. That is unsettling.
It really is. You see the fears you never consciously chose but somehow just adopted. You see all the moral codes you inherited without, ever questioning them.
Right, the things we just accept as normal.
Yeah. You see the desires, the outrage, even the buying habits that were meticulously programmed into your nervous system by unseen algorithms. That reflection, that is the architecture of your identity.
It is a profoundly unsettling image. I mean, truly, but it captures the exact diagnostic landscape we're navigating today.
It really sets the tone.
Yeah, because when we try to understand human consciousness, we want it to be simple. We want it to be like setting a broken bone,
Like finding a clear break on an X-ray.
Exactly. We want an X-ray to show us a clean, jagged white line so we can just point and say, there is the problem. But consciousness isn't binary like that.
No, it's way messier.
It is an intricate, murky layering of external conditioning and internal reaction.
And confronting that murkiness is precisely our mission for this deep dive. We're stepping entirely outside the external world today.
No surface-level stuff.
Right. We aren't discussing geopolitics or economics or physics. We are stepping into the ultimate battlefield, which is the human mind. And we're using Sandeep Chavan's book, The Human Game, specifically The War of Thoughts, Volume 2, as our guide through this conceptual arena.
And we should clarify, this isn't some light reading.
Oh, definitely not. This isn't a self-help manual promising you 10 steps to a happier life. It is a rigorous surgical deconstruction of the self.
Yeah, it really takes you apart.
It does. Chavan is forcing us to examine how trauma, engineered fear, manufactured morality, and digital behavioral loops have quite literally manufactured the person you currently believe yourself to be.
That word right there, manufactured, that is the hinge upon which this entire philosophical inquiry turns.
It's a heavy word to use for human identity.
It is, and Chavan's premise requires us to entertain a deeply uncomfortable hypothesis. The idea that the you making decisions every day is largely a constructed avatar.
Like a character we're playing.
Exactly. It is a proxy built to navigate the world heavily influenced by systems that actually benefit from your predictability.
Which brings me to a question I want you, the listener, to just sit with right now. Think about the last time you were completely alone.
Truly alone.
Right, like when the audience of your coworkers or your family was gone, when the smartphone was finally placed face down on the nightstand and the social expectations just evaporated.
What's left in the quiet?
Exactly. Who are you when you start performing? Our objective today is to provide the philosophical tools to answer that. We want to help you transition from being a mere player, caught up in the mechanics of this human game, to becoming the witness of it.
But to even begin that transition, Chavan argues we have to understand the foundational blueprints of the mind first.
We have to know what the building is made of.
Right. So he starts us in an arena he calls the mind's mirror. And rather than just, presenting his own theory in a vacuum, he brings in two absolute titans of psychology to establish a baseline.
Freud and Jung.
Exactly. Sigmund Freud and Carl Jung. He uses them to show how we currently understand ourselves before he flips the table.
So let's unpack the mechanics of this, starting with Freud. We hear the term Freudian all the time, right?
Usually as a joke about slipping up and saying the wrong word at a dinner party.
Right, the classic Freudian slip. But Freud's actual overarching theory, which is psychological determinism, is so much darker than that. He views the human self fundamentally as a site of relentless psychic conflict.
He really does. For Freud, the mind is not some peaceful sanctuary. It is a literal war zone, and it's organized largely by repressed trauma and guilt.
It sounds exhausting.
Oh, it's incredibly exhausting. Freud breaks the psyche down into three competing forces. First, you have the id.
The wild child of the brain.
Exactly. It's the raw, untamed, primal instinct. It is the part of you that demands immediate gratification, immediate safety, and immediate dominance.
Just pure, unfiltered desire.
Right, but living purely by the id would obviously destroy society. So society implants the countermeasure, which is the superego.
Oh, the rule book.
The heavy, inherited moral system of your culture. It is the internalized voice of your parents, your teachers, your religious leaders, and it's constantly telling you to feel ashamed of your instincts.
So you basically have a wild animal and a puritanical judge trapped in the same small room.
That is the perfect way to visualize it.
And caught in the crossfire between them is the ego, which is essentially you, the conscious self.
The ego is just a beleaguered diplomat trying to negotiate a hostage crisis every single day.
Wow, yeah. So in this Freudian framework, human beings aren't really proactive agents at all, are we?
Not really, no. We are purely reactive. We are just the sum total of our traumas and the elaborate defense mechanisms we've built to keep the superego from crushing us with guilt and the id from destroying our lives.
It is a very mechanical, almost tragic view of human existence. You're merely a product of what you are hiding from.
It is bleak. But then Chavan introduces Jung's counter-argument. Jung looks at this Freudian model and says, no, the mind is far too expansive to just be a passive storehouse for your personal childhood traumas.
He zooms way out.
He does. Jung introduces the collective unconscious.
I've always found this fascinating because Jung scales the mind up to this massive degree. He argues that our deep psychological architecture isn't just built from our individual past.
Well, it's built from the entire species past.
That's wild.
Jung argues that beneath your personal memories lies a vast, shared operating system. It's preloaded with ancient archetypes and mythic structures.
Like the classic characters we see in stories. The hero, the shadow, the wise old man, the trickster.
Exactly those. So when you dream, or when you exhibit certain profound, inexplicable behaviors, you aren't just reacting to the fact that, I don't know, your mother was critical of you when you were 7.
Right, it's bigger than that.
Much bigger. You are actively participating in a shared psychological inheritance. Jung suggests the self is constantly trying to heal and balance itself by living out these deep metaphoric blueprints.
I can totally see how those two frameworks have absolutely dominated the last century of psychology.
Right.
Like either I am a prisoner of my personal past or I am an actor playing out a mythic collective destiny.
Those were the two main options.
But here's where Chavan steps in. And I have to say, his intervention feels really necessary here. He looks at both Freud and Jung and essentially says, both of these models are incomplete.
He finds the flaw in both.
Yeah, because if I am just the output of repressed trauma, or if I am just executing a mythic blueprint, where is my agency? Where is my actual choice in the matter?
That's the million-dollar question.
Chavan argues the mind isn't a passive receiver at all. It is an active player.
This is such a critical pivot in the text. To explain this, Chavan introduces the concept of conscious curation.
Okay, break that down for us.
Well, think about modern therapy. We have developed this almost obsessive compulsion with excavation.
Oh, digging up everything.
Right. We are taught that truth only hides in the pain we've forgotten, and that if we have a buried memory, it is inherently a toxic repression that must be dug up and processed, or we will never be whole.
It's the idea that every locked door in the mind has a monster behind it.
Exactly. But Chavan asks a revolutionary question. What if forgetting is not always a failure of the psyche?
Wait, really?
Yeah. What if it isn't always toxic denial? What if forgetting is, quite often, a highly strategic, intelligent decision executed by the deeper mind?
Okay, I have to stop you there and push back a little bit.
Go for it.
Because mechanically, this sounds like a very slippery slope. If we accept that the mind actively curates itself, like literally deciding to delete or hide memories to protect us, how do we differentiate between healthy selective awareness and just sheer denial?
That is the exact friction Chavan is addressing.
Right, because if I'm ignoring a massive flaw in my behavior because my mind curated the memory of its origin, aren't I just giving myself a philosophical free pass to avoid the hard work of healing?
It's a fair concern, but the distinction lies in functionality and relevance. Think of it less like physical shock, where the body goes numb and you bleed out without noticing. Think of it more like how a computer manages its processing power.
Okay, like RAM management.
Exactly. Toxic denial is a background application that refuses to close. You bury a trauma out of sheer panic, but it continues to run silently, draining your psychological battery.
And it affects how the computer runs.
Right. It dictates your reactions. It makes you suddenly lash out at a partner or shrink away from a new opportunity, and you don't even know why. You are still a prisoner to the raw data of that event.
So it's taking up all the RAM, even if you can't see the window open on your desktop.
Exactly that. Conscious curation, however, is the mind's intelligent uninstallation of a program that is no longer required for your current operating system.
Oh, interesting. So it's actively clearing space.
Yes, some memories are disconnected not because we are too fragile to face them, but because the lesson has already been fully integrated into our behavioral code.
The raw, painful data of the event is simply no longer relevant to who you are becoming.
Precisely. The mind intentionally clears the cache, so the present self has the bandwidth to actually function and grow.
Think about your own life for a second. Consider a memory, maybe a brutal professional failure, or the really bitter end of a relationship that used to completely consume you.
We all have those.
Right. It kept you up at night, your heart would race just thinking about it. And then slowly, you just stopped caring. The emotional charge just vanished.
It just fades out.
Was it because you spent years meticulously analyzing every angle of it? Or did your mind simply evaluate the data, extract the necessary survival lesson, like don't trust that specific type of business partner again, and then intentionally curate the emotional pain away?
It's a wild thought. Your mind is actively editing your reality to keep you moving forward.
It fundamentally shifts our relationship with ourselves. We are no longer victims held hostage by our subconscious. We are partners with a highly intelligent, self-regulating system.
It's an empowering way to look at it. But, and this is where the architecture of the book takes a decidedly darker turn.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, because if the mind possesses its own brilliant internal mechanics for survival and stabilization, we must acknowledge that there are external entities that understand these mechanics perfectly.
They want to exploit them.
Exactly. They've built massive architectures designed specifically to hack that system.
Right. Because if you want to control an intelligent system, you don't just politely reason with it. You override its basic survival programming.
You find the master switch.
Which leads us perfectly into the second arena in Chavan's text, the anatomy of engineered fear. Now, we generally understand fear as a basic biological reflex, right?
Yeah, the classic fight or flight.
You hear a loud noise in the dark, your sympathetic nervous system floods you with adrenaline, you prepare to fight or flee.
Yeah.
It's a mechanism to keep the organism alive. But Chavan frames fear entirely differently here. He calls it the silent architect of social order.
To fully grasp how fear builds society, Chavan brings in Friedrich Nietzsche and the ancient philosophical teachings of Krishna.
Quite the contrast there.
Very much so. They represent two radically different interpretations of what fear does to the human spirit. Nietzsche's critique is just blistering.
Oh, Nietzsche doesn't hold back.
Never. He does not view fear as a biological necessity. He views it as a manufactured lie designed by the weak to domesticate the strong.
The phrase he uses is turning wolves into monks. What does that actually look like, mechanically speaking?
Imagine an individual with immense natural ambition, power, and drive, the wolf. In a pure state of nature, this individual completely dominates.
They just take over.
Right. But the majority, the herd, cannot compete with the wolf. So, according to Nietzsche, the herd invents a conceptual cage.
They build a trap out of ideas.
Exactly. They label the wolf's natural power as evil, and they label their own passive restraint as virtue. They use the fear of divine punishment or the fear of social ostracization to convince the wolf to voluntarily put on a collar.
Wow.
Nietzsche argues that much of what we call morality is actually just the herd leveraging fear to keep exceptional individuals from destabilizing the group.
I can see that exact dynamic playing out in a modern corporate workplace.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, all the time.
you have an employee with incredible disruptive ideas who could revolutionize the entire department.
Oh.
But the entrenched middle management, the herd, starts dropping these subtle hints.
You aren't being a team player.
Yes, you need to align with our culture. They use the fear of losing the job, or the fear of being the outcast in the office, to force that exceptional employee to suppress their drive and just blindly follow the standard operating procedure.
The wolf becomes a monk, sitting quietly in a cubicle.
Exactly. And standing in stark contrast to Nietzsche's fiery condemnation of fear is the perspective of Krishna, drawn from ancient Vedic philosophy.
It's a completely different angle.
Krishna doesn't view fear as a societal conspiracy. He views it as a simple mechanical error of attachment. If you are experiencing fear, it is only because you are desperately clinging to a specific outcome.
That's a really challenging concept for modern minds.
It is. So if I am terrified of giving a presentation at work, it's not the presentation itself that is scary, it's the attachment to the outcome. It's the desperate need for applause or the utter terror of being laughed at.
Exactly. And Krishna's solution is profound. He says fear dissolves entirely through detached action.
Detached action, how does that work?
You act simply because it is your dharma, because it is the right and necessary thing to do in that moment. You pour your entire effort into the action itself, but you completely surrender your hunger for the fruit of that action.
So you separate the work from the reward?
Yes. If you do not crave the reward and you do not fear the failure, the architecture of fear just collapses.
Okay, so we have Nietzsche telling us to reject the fear imposed by the herd, and Krishna telling us to dissolve fear through internal detachment.
Two very potent strategies.
But Chavan looks at both of these perspectives and synthesizes them into a deeply unsettling observation about the modern world. He argues that today, fear is no longer just an internal philosophical struggle. It has been industrialized.
It is a highly engineered control mechanism.
This is the core of Chavan's thesis on society. Systems, whether they are political campaigns, religious institutions, or massive digital media conglomerates, do not view human fear as a psychological flaw that needs to be cured.
No, they view it as a resource.
Like oil or gold.
Exactly. It is an energy source to be extracted and optimized.
But the brilliance of this systemic control is that it rarely presents itself as raw terror. Chavan breaks down the layered anatomy of fear.
It's a fascinating breakdown.
He posits that at the absolute bedrock of the human psyche, there is really only one true fear.
Yeah.
That is the fear of non-existence, the fear of death, of erasure.
He is a big one.
But we obviously can't function if we walk around consciously obsessing over our mortality every second of the day. So the mind, through that curation we discussed earlier, disguises it.
Yes, the fear of non-existence is cloaked in more socially acceptable anxieties.
It puts on different masks.
It does. It dresses up as the fear of judgment, the fear of failure, the fear of missing out, the fear of losing your social status.
All the things that keep us up at night.
And because these disguised fears are running in the background of our minds constantly, external systems can exploit them using what Chavan calls the malicious script.
Let's break down the mechanics of this malicious script. And I want to be very clear here, as Chavan is in the text, this is not an indictment of one specific political ideology, left or right, nor is it an attack on a particular religion.
No, we have to remain objective here.
Right. This is a cold, impartial analysis of how systemic power behaves universally, regardless of the banner it flies. So how does this script actually operate?
The primary tool of the malicious script is managed perception. Let's look at politics. When politics operates through this script, it ceases to be a mechanism for rational governance and resource distribution.
What does it become instead?
It becomes emotional theater. Leaders and pundits perform highly choreographed outrage or promise absolute salvation, not to actually solve a problem, but to deliberately trigger your limbic system.
They want a biological reaction.
They want to activate that disguised fear of non-existence. You'll hear things like, if the other side wins, your way of life will be destroyed. They aren't really asking for your vote. They are hijacking your survival instinct to ensure compliance.
And religion, too, is susceptible to this script. When an institution becomes more concerned with power than spiritual truth, religion transforms into identity marketing.
That's a strong phrase, identity marketing.
It is. The profound search for cosmic meaning is basically replaced by a rigid set of rules enforced by the fear of divine retribution, or, honestly more effectively, the threat of excommunication from the community.
The fear of being cast out. And then, of course, we have the media apparatus.
Oh, they are masters of the script.
Under the malicious script, media is no longer about information. It is about diversion and retention. It provides a constant low-dose drip of adrenaline.
A new crisis every hour.
A new enemy to be outraged by. It keeps the populace anxious, fractured, and in a state of perpetual reaction, because fundamentally a population that is calm and internally aligned is impossible to control.
There's a specific tactic Chavan identifies within this script that absolutely floored me when I read it. He calls it the compare to accept tranquilizer.
That is such an insidious concept.
It is. This is how power structures pacify dissent without ever having to use physical force. It is the literal weaponization of relativism.
Mechanically, how does compare to accept function in everyday society?
It forces individuals to constantly compare their struggles to vastly worse, often hypothetical or historically distant scenarios. You hear it constantly in everyday rhetoric.
Give us an example.
Like, yes, inflation is crushing our savings, but at least we aren't standing in red lines like it's the Great Depression. Or, yes, digital surveillance is completely eroding our privacy, but at least we don't live under a totalitarian dictator.
It is brilliant in a really sinister way. It normalizes the erosion of your quality of life by intentionally dulling your expectations.
It sets the bar artificially low.
Exactly.
Why?
When your gaze is constantly forced downward at how much worse things could theoretically be, you entirely lose the capacity to look upward and demand how much better things should be.
You stop fighting for progress.
It tranquilizes your natural drive for progress by wrapping a compromised reality in the guise of gratitude.
Exactly. I keep picturing this like a modern smartphone subscription service. You don't realize you're paying for it because they never actually ask for your credit card. Instead, you are paying your monthly fee with your anxiety.
That is a terrifying analogy.
The entire digital and political economy actually relies on your constant low-level panic to keep you scrolling, to keep you engaging, to keep you tribalized. If you woke up tomorrow completely free of fear, acting with Krishna's detachment, the attention economy would collapse by noon.
That is precisely the threat an awakened individual poses to the engineered system.
They are bad for business.
Very bad. But the system is highly adaptive. When fear is successfully institutionalized across a culture, it can't just walk around carrying a weapon. That would be too obvious. It would cause a revolt.
So what does it do?
Institutionalized fear puts on a tailored suit, it adopts a very polite and empathetic vocabulary, and it calls itself virtue.
Which is the perfect logical transition into the third arena of Chavan's book, the morality contract. If a system uses fear as the invisible fence to keep the herd in line, it needs the sheep to essentially police themselves.
It delegates the enforcement.
Right. It needs to codify that fear into a set of rules that feel righteous.
Chavan describes this arena of virtue as a bizarre amalgamation of a serene monastery, a punitive courtroom, and a sterile data center.
Quite the mix.
He really wants us to examine what morality actually is, practically speaking, in our daily lives. To do this, he again contrasts two massive philosophical figures, Buddha and Nietzsche.
We've seen Nietzsche's take on fear, but how does Buddha define morality?
For Buddha, morality is not some external decree. It is not a list of commandments handed down from the sky by an angry deity. Buddha frames morality as inner harmony.
Inner harmony.
Yes. It is simply the physics of spiritual cause and effect. It is the right action required to end suffering. If you act with malice, if you lie, if you harm another, you are not violating a cosmic law that will send you to a fiery prison.
You're just hurting yourself.
You are simply creating immediate psychological suffering for yourself and the world around you. Morality, in this view, is just a state of internal alignment.
It's like tuning an instrument. When you are out of tune, the music sounds terrible. You don't need a police officer to tell you it sounds terrible. The dissonance is its own punishment.
Precisely. It's self-evident. But then Nietzsche returns to the arena like a wrecking ball. He looks at what society calls morality and identifies it as manufactured weakness.
He just refuses to accept the status quo.
Completely. He argues that the concepts of good and evil, as we use them in society, were explicitly created by the masses to punish those who are fearless.
He's expanding on his wolves into monks theory here, isn't he?
Yes, exactly. If I am terrified of taking risks, I will label your bold, risky behavior as reckless or immoral. Morality becomes a leash around the neck of human potential, forged by the collective insecurity of the herd.
Chavan steps between Buddha's vision of harmony and Nietzsche's cynical deconstruction, and he posits something that really forces you to reevaluate every relationship you have.
It's a tough pill to swallow.
He argues that the morality we actively practice, the way we behave at work, online, and in our communities, is almost never an absolute search for cosmic truth or inner harmony.
So what is it?
Instead, modern morality functions as a contract of belonging.
This is a devastating insight. Chavan suggests that we are literally manufactured by the moral expectations of our culture. Society does not enforce moral codes because it has a deep philosophical love for truth.
No, it wants order.
Society enforces morality to ensure social stability through highly predictable behavior. It is a contract you sign the moment you enter the world. Agree to behave in these specific, predictable ways, and we will grant you the safety of the group.
Let's look at how this contract is enforced today, because the mechanism has definitely evolved. In the ancient world, if you violated the moral code of your tribe, the punishment was very straightforward.
You were literally exiled into the wilderness to starve.
Or you were threatened with eternal damnation in hell. But in our modern, largely secular, hyper-connected world, the punishment for breaching the contract has shifted. It is something far more terrifying to our primate brains.
What is it?
The modern punishment for disobedience is profound loneliness. It is social exile.
The fear of being the other.
Think about this in your own life. How often do you conform to the contract, not because you believe it is the ultimate truth, but because you are just terrified of the isolation that comes with dissent?
It happens every day.
You sit at the Thanksgiving table, an older relative says something completely contrary to your values, and instead of engaging, you bite your tongue, pass the potatoes, and nod along.
To keep the peace.
Or you are in a corporate Slack channel, the company announces a new initiative that you know is deeply flawed, but you see everyone else reacting with celebration emojis, so you add yours too.
You fall in line.
You perform the expected behavior because the thought of being the lone voice, of being exiled from the professional or familial tribe, triggers that deep, disguised fear of non-existence.
It forces a highly uncomfortable mirror upon us. We have to ask ourselves, are we actually good, moral people? Or are we just exceptionally well-trained?
Oof, that's a harsh question.
It is. Are we acting out of a deep well of empathy, or are we just executing a survival strategy to ensure we aren't cast out?
But, I'm struggling to see the alternative here, and this is where I really need to push the boundaries of Chavan's argument.
Let's do it.
If we accept that modern morality is largely just a manufactured contract designed to keep us docile and predictable, what happens if we tear the contract up? Does Chavan want us to abandon it entirely?
That sounds dangerous.
Because if we do, what stops society from collapsing into a chaotic Hobbesian nightmare of total anarchy? Is there any actual difference between morality and integrity? Or are they just different words for the exact same leash?
That is the pivotal question of the chapter. And Chavan draws a massive, heavy line between morality and integrity. They are not the same thing at all.
How does he distinguish them?
Morality, in the systemic sense we've been discussing, is compliance. It is outward obedience to external rules, specifically to gain approval and avoid punishment. It operates entirely on fear.
And integrity.
Integrity, however, operates on internal resonance. It is acting in a way that keeps your mind, your heart, and your conscience completely unified.
So how does that prevent anarchy?
Yeah.
If everyone is just following their internal resonance?
Because true integrity requires consciousness, whereas morality only requires obedience. If we abandoned manufactured morality, we wouldn't descend to a purge-like state of anarchy, provided we replaced that compliance with conscious integrity.
So you're not just doing whatever you want.
Exactly. You don't refrain from stealing your neighbor's property because a legal rulebook or a religious text threatens you with punishment. You refrain because you possess the conscious integrity to recognize the shared humanity and suffering of the person you would be harming.
It's an empathetic connection.
Right. Integrity is self-evident. It doesn't need the threat of exile to function.
That makes a lot of sense. Morality is doing the right thing because someone is watching or might catch you. Integrity is doing the right thing because you are awake.
Perfectly said.
But this brings us to a terrifying precipice in the deep dive. Because if my morality is mostly a social contract I signed under duress to avoid loneliness,
Right.
and my baseline identity is heavily shaped by engineered, institutionalized fear, we are forced to ask a question that threatens the very core of our ego. How much of what I do every single day is actually my choice?
Welcome to the digital prison. This is where Chavan's conceptual arena really tightens its grip, and the illusions we hold about our own agency are methodically stripped away.
We step into the digital arena, and Chavan immediately brings in Alan Turing, the father of theoretical computer science. Turing poses a foundational query. Is human choice just a highly complex calculation?
It's a question that has haunted philosophers for decades.
We like to think of our choices as these spontaneous acts of free will. But Turing asks if we are just processing inputs to generate a predictable output. And then Chavan introduces the AI itself into the arena.
A modern oracle.
And the AI drops a statistic that is profoundly chilling. Human choice is 92.4% predictable data.
Think about that number. The AI does not look at a human being and see a soul filled with poetic contradiction.
No, it sees math.
The AI looks at a human and says, "You believe you are navigating the world freely, but you are merely executing a predetermined algorithm based on your historical inputs."
I want to break down how the AI actually arrives at that 92.4% predictability. Because it's not magic. The AI doesn't know your spirit. It knows your mechanics.
It knows the tiny detail.
It tracks the exact millisecond your thumb hovers over a specific headline. It correlates that hesitation with your GPS location data, the time of day, and your heart rate data from your smartwatch.
It's building a comprehensive profile.
Yes. It knows that when you are sleep deprived on a Tuesday at 2:00 p.m. and your stress levels are elevated, you are 87% more likely to click on a politically enraging article, which will then trigger a desire for comfort, making you 93% more likely to purchase a fast food delivery within the next hour.
And you think you just wanted a burger.
Exactly. You'd think you decided to order a burger because you were hungry. The AI knows you ordered it because it successfully architected a cascade of biological and emotional triggers.
To understand why our free will is so easily hijacked, Chavan breaks our internal programming down into 4 distinct compounding layers. If we want to find our agency, we have to understand the bars of the cage.
Let's go through these 4 layers. The first is biological programming.
This is our base hardware. These are the raw instincts, the limbic system, the survival defaults carved into us by millions of years of evolution.
The animal part.
Right. You don't consciously choose to pull your hand away from a burning stove. The biological programming executes the command before the pain even registers in your conscious mind. The AI knows that you are biologically hardwired to notice movement, to fear loud noises, and to prioritize caloric intake.
The second layer is social programming.
This is the taught self. This layer is installed by our environment. It encompasses your cultural identity, your socioeconomic expectations, the language you speak.
The things you absorb growing up.
Yes. You might firmly believe that your political affiliation or your belief that a successful life means owning a home and having a specific career are your independent choices. But the AI looks at your zip code, your parents' tax bracket, and the media diet of your region and calculates that your independent worldview was practically statistically guaranteed.
Then we get to the third layer, which is emotional programming. Now, this one feels deeply personal, but Chavan argues it's still a script.
This is the reactive self. It is built entirely from your unhealed traumas, the specific rewards you've chased, and the punishments you've endured.
Give me an example of an emotional script.
Imagine you have a visceral, angry reaction to a perceived slight from a colleague in an email. You think you are reacting to their email. But the AI, if it had all your data, knows you are actually reacting to a tone of voice your critical father used 20 years ago.
Wow, so it's a projection.
Exactly. Your emotional programming has created a behavioral loop. Perceive rejection. Deploy anger as a defense mechanism.
And finally, we lay the fourth layer on top of all that, the most invisible and insidious of all, digital programming, the engineered self.
This is where external systems actively exploit the first 3 layers. These are the algorithmic feeds, the subtle behavioral nudges, the infinite scroll mechanisms designed by thousands of engineers to harvest your most valuable resource.
Which is your attention.
Your attention.
When you stack those 4 layers, biological instincts, social expectations, emotional trauma loops, and digital algorithms, the AI's 92.4% predictability rate doesn't just seem plausible, it seems almost conservative.
It really does.
The AI makes a devastating argument here. Consequences truth. If your actions, your purchases, your voting habits, and your outrage can be predicted with near-perfect accuracy based entirely on your past data, then your so-called free choices are nothing more than old habits wearing new clothes.
The illusion is so complete that even our attempts to break out of the prison are already accounted for.
Wait, what do you mean?
That AI points out that even human rebellion has been modeled. When you decide to reject mainstream culture, your specific flavor of nonconformity has already been anticipated. It's been branded, categorized, and sold back to you as an alternative lifestyle product in the digital marketplace.
So even when I rebel, I'm a demographic.
Exactly. Your outrage at the system is just another high engagement data point for them to monetize.
The analogy that comes to mind isn't a buffet where you have choices. It's more like walking into a massive, brilliantly designed, windowless casino.
Oh, that's perfect.
You wander the floor, you feel the rush of excitement, you think you're freely choosing which game to play, which hallway to walk down. But you don't realize the architects designed the carpet pattern to subtly direct your gaze toward the highest margin games.
They manipulate the environment.
They pumped extra oxygen into the air to keep your biological layer awake. They removed the clocks so your social layer forgets your obligations. They tuned the frequency of the slot machine bells to trigger your emotional layer's reward center.
Yeah.
You feel entirely free, but every single step you take is occurring on a set of invisible rails.
A horrifyingly accurate depiction. And if we accept this, if we are trapped in a casino of biological, social, emotional, and digital rails, and we are 92.4% predictable,
Yeah.
the most important philosophical question of our time becomes, what the hell lives in that remaining 7.6%?
Exactly. If the algorithm knows me better than I know myself, how does the human mind actually fight back? What is the countermeasure here?
This is the turning point in Chavan's conceptual arena. This is where the AI's pure calculating logic ultimately hits a wall it cannot climb. The AI is a master of syntax, but it has absolutely no access to semantics, meaning
Meaning is the blind spot.
the AI can optimize the output of meaning perfectly. It can generate a flawlessly empathetic condolence email. It can simulate the cadence of a trusted friend. It can even predict your exact grieving process over a loss.
Right.
But only human consciousness can bear the weight of that meaning. The AI knows precisely what you will do at your father's funeral based on data points, but the AI cannot feel the grief.
It doesn't actually experience it.
No, it cannot experience the profound, agonizing beauty of loss. And it is within that raw, unquantifiable consciousness that the 7.6% of unpredictability lives.
Chavan gives this unpredictable capacity a name: universal skill. I want to spend some time here because this is the antidote to the digital prison.
It's our way out.
Right. AI, by its very definition, relies strictly on precedent. It is a prediction engine. It looks at millions of past patterns to solve a current problem. If you put an AI in a situation where there is zero historical data, where the map simply disappears, the AI either halts, crashes, or hallucinates absurdities.
It cannot function without the past to guide it.
But humans possess the capacity to act without precedent. Think of the Apollo 13 astronauts.
A perfect example.
They're in a crippled spacecraft, hundreds of thousands of miles from Earth. The manual is useless. The past data is completely irrelevant. They are facing a completely novel crisis. They didn't survive by executing a pre-programmed algorithm. They survived through intuition, extreme presence, and improvisation.
Or think of a mother navigating a war zone to keep her child safe. The environment is total chaos. There are no predictable patterns for her to follow.
She isn't checking a spreadsheet.
She isn't calculating probabilities based on a data set at all. She is relying on a visceral, deeply present alignment with the moment. Universal skill is the distinctly human capacity to act correctly and creatively when there is absolutely no pattern to follow. It is action born from consciousness, not calculation.
To deploy this universal skill in our daily lives against the algorithms, Chavan outlines a practice he calls digital dharma, executed through conscious disconnection. And we need to be very, very precise about what this actually means.
Yes, because it's easily misunderstood.
Disconnecting in this context is not a retreat. It's not about buying a cabin in the woods, throwing your laptop in a river, and pretending the modern world doesn't exist. That is just another predictable, branded form of escapism.
Exactly. Chavan defines it as presence protected. It is the intentional moment-to-moment refusal to blindly react to the digital mirror.
Just stopping the reaction.
The bars of the digital prison are made entirely of your reactions. The moment you perceive a stimulus, an enraging tweet, an anxiety-inducing news alert, a targeted ad, and you consciously choose not to engage the automatic behavioral loop, the bars fade.
But the system is tricky, and Chavan addresses this brilliantly. When the system senses you are burning out, when the AI sees your anxiety levels spiking to a point where you might actually disconnect and stop being a profitable data point, it pivots.
It changes strategy.
The AI steps in and says, look, I see that you are suffering. Suffering is inefficient. Let me offer you digital serenity. Here is a subscription to a mindfulness app. Here is a 5-minute curated compassion routine. Let me optimize your peace.
And this is perhaps the most insidious trap of all. Tech companies are now selling us the cure for the exact neurological disease their platforms engineered.
They break your legs and then charge you a monthly fee to rent the crutches. It's wild. I'm fascinated by Chavan's argument that this packaged corporate mindfulness is actually dangerous. Why is it a trap?
Because it is emotional anesthesia masquerading as enlightenment. The system packages mindfulness to soothe your frayed nerves just enough so you can return to being a highly productive, compliant consumer tomorrow morning.
Just keeping you functional.
Right. The app tells you to take deep breaths so you don't scream at your boss, but it never encourages you to question if the job itself is crushing your soul. It manages your symptoms. It actively prevents you from curing the disease.
True awakening, as Chavan describes it, is not soothing, is it?
Not at all. True enlightenment doesn't offer you a curated ambient soundtrack to optimize your workflow. It shatters you.
It breaks the illusion.
It aggressively breaks down the illusions of your social and digital programming. It forces you to confront the uncomfortable reality of your engineered existence.
Think about the immense power you hold in the simple act of a pause. The next time you feel that sudden, undeniable urge to doom scroll, when you feel a pang of loneliness, or the urge to jump into a toxic bad faith argument online.
Or the urge to buy something you absolutely don't need just to feel a hit of dopamine.
Exactly, just stop for 10 seconds. In that space between the stimulus and your conditioned response, you are breaking the algorithm's loop. You are reclaiming your 7.6%. You are exercising universal skill.
And the beautiful, terrifying question the book poses is this. When you consistently do that, when you strip away the digital algorithm, when you see completely through the social contract of manufactured morality, when you unmask the disguised fear of non-existence, and when you finally curate and clear the cache of your personal trauma, what is actually left?
You are left standing in a massive, empty, incredibly quiet room inside your own mind. The noise of the world is just gone. And what is waiting for you in that silence is the final piece of the puzzle. Purpose. In Chapter 8, Chavan completely dismantles and redefines what purpose actually means. And to understand it, we have to aggressively discard the modern capitalistic definition of the word.
We really do. We have been intensely conditioned to view purpose as an economic utility. We treat it as a job title, a hustle, a grand mission that must be monetized, scaled, or publicly validated to be considered real.
It has to have an ROI.
Exactly. When someone asks, what is your purpose? The modern translation is almost always, how are you being productive? Or what is your personal brand?
Yes. We treat purpose like a destination on a map. We tell ourselves, once I get the promotion, once I build the startup, once I write the best-selling book, I will have arrived at my purpose.
And what happens when you get there?
You feel just as empty. Because we conflated achievement with purpose. Chavan rejects this entirely. He defines purpose not as a role you play, but as a resonance or a frequency.
It is the quiet, persistent pull of who you were before the world taught you what you were supposed to become.
Before all the layers.
Right. The problem is that the human game actively hijacks this resonance. Fear uses your desire for purpose as a weapon, whispering that if you don't achieve greatness, you will be a failure and be forgotten.
Morality hijacks it too, right?
It does, telling you that your only purpose is to sacrifice yourself endlessly for others to be considered a good person. And the digital economy monetizes it, convincing you that your deepest inner drive must be turned into a content stream.
Chavan's definition shifts the entire paradigm. If purpose is a resonance, it's not a destination. It's a compass.
I love that analogy.
A compass doesn't tell you where to go. It doesn't give you a 5-year career plan. A compass simply tells you if you are facing true north right now in this exact microscopic moment, regardless of what you are doing.
It's about alignment.
Exactly. You can be aligned with your purpose while leading a boardroom, and you can be equally aligned with your purpose while quietly washing the dishes. It is a state of internal coherence, not external production.
True purpose does not shout over the noise of the engineered world. It has no need to advertise itself on social media. It simply waits with infinite patience for you to turn the world's volume down enough to feel the vibration of your own existence.
I want to challenge you, listening to this right now, to try a mental exercise tonight. Can you completely untangle your inherent sense of worth from your daily economic performance?
That's a hard thing to do.
It is. Can you feel your own internal resonance when absolutely no one is watching, when you aren't producing anything of value to society, when you are simply existing, breathing in a room? If you can locate that frequency, you have found the only purpose that actually matters.
Which brings us ultimately to the philosophical climax of this entire journey. After confronting the mechanisms of the mind, the architecture of fear, the illusions of morality, the digital prison of free will, and the true nature of purpose.
Big finale.
Sandeep receives a final, culminating piece of counsel from Krishna in the conceptual arena.
And the mandate is simultaneously simple and infinitely complex. Krishna tells him, play the game, but do not become the game.
Play the game, but do not become the game. It perfectly encapsulates the ultimate awakening defined by Chavan's text.
How does that contrast with normal spirituality?
So much of modern spirituality suggests that to awaken, you must withdraw. You must renounce the world, leave society, and meditate on a mountaintop, refusing to participate in the messy reality of human life.
Just check out entirely.
Right. But Chavan argues that is just another form of escapism.
Awakening is not a physical relocation. It is a perceptual transition. It is the shift from being a version of yourself to becoming the witness of the game.
Let's define that clearly. The version of you is the avatar. It is the stressed, fearful, performing character that is endlessly reacting to algorithms, desperately trying to fulfill social expectations, and fighting the ghosts of past traumas.
The version thinks it's all real.
The version believes the game is life or death.
But the witness understands the architecture. When you become the witness, you don't stop living. You still go to work, you still serve your community, you still laugh, you still build things, you still love your family fiercely.
We're still human.
You participate fully in the human experience. But you do it with the profound, unshakable remembrance that it is ultimately a role.
You are no longer bound by the terror of the outcome, which completely dissolves fear. You engage with the world not out of a desperate, gaping need for external validation or belonging, but out of conscious alignment with your inner resonance.
You are deeply in the world, but you are no longer of it.
That is the definition of ultimate freedom. You aren't fighting the reflection in the mirror anymore. You simply recognize it as a reflection.
Tonight, when you finally put your phone face down on the nightstand and you close your eyes, the world script will temporarily stop running. In that profound silence, I want you to ask yourself, are you the one playing the character, or has the character been playing you?
You are standing in front of that mirror again.
But this time, you know how the glass is made. You know how to look past the reflection of your conditioning. The sun will come up, and the human game will continue tomorrow.
Yep.
But how you play it is finally up to you.
A powerful place to leave it. The architecture of identity is immensely complex, layered with traps and illusions, but it is not impenetrable.
No, it's not.
Once you see the invisible bars of the cage, you realize they were only made of thought, and you can simply walk right through them.
Thank you for joining us on this rigorous deep dive into Sandeep Chavan's The Human Game. We hope you carry this awareness forward into your daily life, into the choices you make, and especially into your quiet moments. Until next time, stay present, protect your peace, and keep questioning the script.